Validation rules are required to ensure data quality. Validation rules verify that the data that is being entered by the users in the records meets the criteria that you have specified before the user can save the record. A validation rule can contain a formula or expression that evaluates the data in one or more fields and returns a value of true or false based on evaluating the formula. If the validation rule returns a value of true, it means the data being entered by the user is invalid. Validation rules can also include error messages that we can display to the user when they enter invalid values in the record. In this video, we'll be creating validation rules on certain fields in a standard and custom objects, and we'll be looking at different kinds of fields like numeric fields, date fields, and URL fields. To create validation rules, go to Setup, click on Object Manager and select Account. Now under Fields and Relationships, we have a field called Account Number, which can contain 40 characters of data type text. We want to create a validation rule to ensure the account number is exactly 8 characters in length. So we'll create a new validation rule, give the rule a name, account number 8 characters, keep it active. We would enter the error condition formula in this area. Let's look at the functions that are available to us to evaluate text functions. We have something called length. So let's insert this selected function. What it does is it checks the length of a text that is submitted to the function. So instead of text, we want to insert a field called account number. We want to return an error if the length of account number is not equal to 8 characters. If the user enters anything which is not 8 characters, it will return a value of true, and that will trigger the error message to be displayed. So let's create an error message. Account number must be 8 characters long. We can display the error either at top of the page or near the field. In this case, since it's a field validation rule, it makes sense to display it near the field account number. Save this. Let's go back and try to edit an account. If we try to leave the account number blank, it will still generate an error saying account number must be 8 characters long, which means our validation rule in effect has made account number a required field now. Let's try to enter an invalid value, save it, and it still gives the same error message. Account number must be 8 characters long. Let's actually make it 8 characters, save it, and this time it has passed our validation rule and allowed us to save a valid value in the record. Now, in addition to ensuring the account number is 8 characters long, we also want to ensure the user only enters numbers and does not make it a alphanumeric account number. So let's go back to the validation rule and edit it. Now, what we want to check is we want to generate an error if the length of account number is not equal to 8 and the account number is not a number. So under logical functions, we have the not function. Let's insert that. What we want to check is the account number not a number? So we also have a is number function. Let's insert that as the logical formula. Instead of the text, we'll insert the account number field. Now, how do we combine these two formulas? We are going to combine both these formulas under a logical OR function. So if you insert this function, the first logical condition is length of account number not equal to 8, and second logical condition is account number is not numeric. Now, the advantage of inserting a selected function is that we get a structure and we know all the parentheses are correctly closed. We can also check the syntax to ensure that there are no errors in our validation rule. Now, since we've added an expression in the validation rule, let's also modify the error message to say account number must be numeric and 8 characters long. Save that, go back to our account record. Now let's try to edit it and save it. Now it gives us an error because alphanumeric account number is not accepted. So you can only save this if you make it a numeric value, and then if we save it, it takes it as a valid account number. Let's look at another validation rule on a date field. So let's say we want to ensure on opportunities, we have close date, and we want to ensure that the close date is in the current year itself. So to define that validation rule, let's again go back to Setup, Object Manager, find opportunity. The field we are looking at is close date. Data type is date. So we go to validation rules, click new. Let's name our rule close date must be in current year. We'll leave the rule active and let's start defining the formula. Insert the field. What we want to check is the year of the close date. there's a function called year. You can also look at the date functions that are available to us. We have year. We want to generate an error if the year of the close date is not equal to the current year. So to find the current year, you would use the year function and today's date. So to get today's date, you would use the today function. Check the syntax, no errors found. The error message to be displayed will be date must be in the current year. Again, it's a field level validation, so it makes sense to display it at the close date field. Save that, go back to create an opportunity, new opportunity, give an opportunity name, make sure to select the required fields, and what we want to test is the close date. Select a date which is not in the current year and try to save that. It says date must be in the current year. When we put in valid data and select a date that is current, it allows us to save the record. We can also create validation rules to check two different fields. So for example, let's say we want the order number to be the same as the tracking number. Now there are many other ways to achieve that kind of a requirement, but here we're just trying out validation rules. So we are making up scenarios. Let's see how to achieve order number should be equal to tracking number validation rule. On the opportunity object, we'll create a new validation rule. We name it order number equals tracking number, keep it active. Here we want to compare the field order number, and it should return an error if it is not equal to tracking number. Check the syntax. We can define an error message. Order number should be equal to tracking number. Display it near the field. We can choose one of the fields to display the error message and save that. Now let's look at a validation rule on a URL field. On the account object, we have a field called website, which has a data type of URL. So let's create a new validation rule. Let's say we want to ensure the URL should end in .com or .org only. We would name the rule URL should be com or org. When naming the rule name, remember you cannot have a dot in the rule name, otherwise it will give you an error. Keep it active. And the formula will use the AND function, and we'll check the last four characters of the website field should end in .com in capital or small letters or .org in capital or small letters. So if all of these conditions are not fulfilled, it will generate an error and display the error message. Website URL should end in .com or .org only.